You're standing in a hut. It's 12,000 years ago. There's no TV, no phone, no group chat blowing up with memes, no algorithm feeding you short videos at 2 a.m. when you should be asleep. You have finished hunting for the day. You have finished gathering. The sun is still up. And you have, by every modern definition, absolutely nothing to do. So here's the question that should be bothering you right now. Why weren't they bored out of their minds? Because if you took away your phone, your streaming services, your books, your games, every single form of entertainment you own, and left you sitting in a hut for 4 hours with nothing, you would lose it. You'd be climbing the walls within 20 minutes. So what did they do? And more importantly, why does it seem like they didn't need any of it? Let's start with a number that breaks most people's mental model of prehistory completely. For decades, the assumption was that ancient humans spent almost every waking hour struggling to survive. Hunting, gathering, fighting off starvation, exhausted, desperate, grinding. Turns out that's mostly wrong. In the 1960s, anthropologist Marshall Solins studied hunter-gatherer societies still living traditional lifestyles and found something that stunned the entire field. Groups like the Juhuanzi of the Kalahari spent roughly 15 to 20 hours a week actually acquiring food. 15 to 20 hours. That's less than a part-time job. Solins called this the original affluent society, and the label wasn't sarcastic. He meant it. Not affluent because they had more stuff, but affluent because they had more time. Time is the actual currency of a good life, and by that measure, hunter-gatherers were often richer than you are right now reading this. So, if they weren't working constantly, what were they doing with the rest of the day? This is where it gets interesting, because the answer isn't nothing. It's a version of everything you already do, minus the screens. Start with talking. Just talking. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied the Jew/Huanzi specifically and found that during the day, conversation revolved mostly around practical matters. Who saw what animal where? Who needs what? Logistics. But at night, around the fire, something shifted completely. Nighttime conversation became almost entirely stories. Myths, gossip, jokes, tales about ancestors, tension between camps, who did what to whom decades ago. Storytelling wasn't a hobby squeezed in around survival. It was, arguably, the main event. And here's the detail that should stop you for a second. Wiesner found that firelight conversation had a specific psychological effect. It softened social hierarchies, encouraged imagination, extended people's sense of time and connection to others across distances and generations. In other words, the campfire was doing exactly what your phone is trying, and mostly failing, to do. Connecting you to other people's lives. Now let's talk about play, because this is where the story gets genuinely strange. Children in hunter-gatherer societies play constantly, and researchers who study groups like the Hadza in Tanzania have documented something remarkable. Kids as young as 4 or 5 practice adult skills through play. Little bows, little digging sticks, pretend hunts, pretend fires. Anthropologist Peter Gray has argued that this kind of self-directed play isn't just cute, it's the primary education system of the species. No classrooms, no curriculum, no homework, just an enormous amount of unstructured time to explore, fail, invent games, and figure out how the world works through direct experimentation. And adults didn't fully stop either. Grown men in some hunter-gatherer societies have been observed spending hours crafting elaborate, decorative arrowheads that offer no functional advantage whatsoever over a plain one. Pure aesthetic indulgence. Prehistoric fidgeting, basically, except the fidget turned into art that lasted 10,000 years and ended up in a museum. Here's the part that should really mess with your head, though. Modern neuroscience has actually found a biological reason ancient humans might not have experienced boredom the way we do, and it comes down to dopamine. Your brain's dopamine system didn't evolve to reward you for constant novelty. It evolved to reward you for closing a loop, finding food when hungry, spotting a threat and avoiding it, solving a problem that mattered right now. This is called an effort-reward loop, and for almost the entirety of human evolution, satisfying it required real, physical, often skillful effort spread out across a full day. You tracked an animal for hours, and then you got the payoff. You searched for tubers under the wrong bushes for a while, and then you found the right one. The dopamine hit was earned slowly, and it was tied to something meaningful. Modern entertainment broke that system completely. A smartphone delivers hundreds of tiny dopamine hits per hour with almost zero effort attached. Swipe, hit, notification, hit. And here's the cruel twist neuroscientists have identified. When your brain gets used to unlimited, effortless rewards, it actually recalibrates its baseline. Ordinary, unstimulating moments, waiting in line, sitting quietly, a slow afternoon, start to feel unbearable by comparison. Researchers studying this phenomenon call it a form of dopamine desensitization. You haven't gotten worse at handling boredom because you're weak. You've built a brain that's been trained on rewards so fast and so frequent that stillness now genuinely hurts. Ancient humans never trained their brains this way. Their reward loops were slow, effortful, and spread across the whole day, which means the contrast between doing something and doing nothing was never as extreme. Their nothing was never actually nothing. There's also a piece of this that's almost embarrassingly simple. Ancient humans were rarely, if ever, alone. Camps were small, tight, socially dense environments where you were almost always within sight or earshot of other people. And here's a detail that gets left out of a lot of survival documentaries. Loneliness itself appears to be one of the strongest predictors of chronic boredom in modern psychological studies. Boredom isn't purely a lack of stimulation, it's often a lack of felt connection. A hunter-gatherer sitting quietly in camp wasn't isolated the way a person scrolling alone in a bedroom is isolated. There were children playing nearby, someone repairing a tool a few feet away, a conversation happening within earshot that you could join at any moment. The absence of formal activity didn't mean the absence of social presence. And it turns out social presence alone, just being near other engaged humans, meaningfully reduces the restless, empty feeling we now call boredom. None of this means life was easy, and it's worth being honest about that for a second. Disease, injury, unpredictable food shortages, high infant mortality, these were brutal realities layered underneath all of this leisure time. Nobody's arguing you should trade modern medicine for a longer afternoon around the fire, but specifically on the question of boredom, on the day-to-day psychological experience of unstructured time, the evidence points somewhere genuinely surprising. Ancient humans likely had more slow, unstimulated hours in their day than you do, and appear to have handled them with less distress, not more. So why didn't they get bored? Because their reward systems weren't broken by nonstop novelty. Because their days were full of slow-burn effort followed by real payoff. Because storytelling, craft, and play filled the hours in ways that were deeply social rather than passively consumed. Because they were almost never actually alone with nothing, even when they were technically doing nothing. And maybe that's the uncomfortable twist in all of this. We built an entire civilization specifically to eliminate boredom, faster information, infinite content, instant rewards on demand, and somehow ended up more bored, more restless, and more desperate for stimulation than people who spent their afternoons sitting quietly by a fire with absolutely nothing scheduled. They had less to do and felt it less. We have infinite things to do and can't sit still for 4 minutes. So next time you're lying on your couch, scrolling for the 11th app in a row, feeling that itchy, restless, nothing is enough feeling creeping in, remember that somewhere back in the Kalahari, someone your ancestors would recognize is sitting by a fire, doing genuinely nothing, and feeling completely, unmistakably fine about it.